Imagine you're visiting the Sistine Chapel in Vatican. You walk into the chapel and you're surrounded with so many masterpieces. You walk forward and behind the altar, you can see the magnificent, huge painting of the Last Judgment by the one and only Michelangelo. There are so many figures in this massive painting. And guess what? One of them is Michelangelo himself. The master has included a self-portrait of himself in this painting. Do you know which one it is? It's this one. It's this one. No joke. That's a self-portrait of Michelangelo. And this guy is Saint Bartolomeo. That's how Bartolomeo dies. He gets de-skinned. So Michelangelo has painted himself in this crowded scene as the flayed skin of Saint Bartolomeo. And this is a thing that repeats in many of the works of self-portraits throughout the Renaissance. The artists show themselves as being a part of the group in the scenes that they depict. This is an important aspect of Renaissance self-portraits. Welcome back to the channel, and let's talk about the group self-portraits of the Renaissance. When you read about the history of self-portraits, generally, they say that Renaissance is the beginning point of self-portraits as a genre. Renaissance being roughly from the 14th century to the end of 16th century in Europe. But when we think about self-portraits, we usually imagine works like this. A single portrait of the artist. But that's not how the tradition begins in the Renaissance. In the beginning of the Renaissance, the main tradition is for the artists to insert themselves in the scenes that they were painting. To understand why, we gotta first take a look at what it means to be an artist in the Renaissance. If you have watched my last video about self-portraits in the Middle Ages, you know the general view towards art back then. Back then, nobody really cared who's painting the religious paintings or who is illustrating the books. What was important was the scenes themselves, the stories of life of Christ and the saints. But things are starting to change little by little in the Renaissance. Being able to paint and create art is being recognized as something special, as a talent given by God. And so being an artist became a virtue, and people started to notice. By people, mostly I mean the people who can actually afford paying for art, the rich people. And as a result, the artists are also believing in themselves, and they're seeing themselves as valuable people, people who are worth drawing. And the thing is, being a virtuous, important person means that they saw themselves as being much closer to important people, like the Pope, and also the religious figures like Jesus and the Virgin Mary and the saints. And so they start to adopt different roles in their paintings. Look at this work by Taddeo di Bartolo. This is the Assumption and Coronation of the Virgin. It was painted in 1401, and as you can see, the style isn't really that much of a Renaissance kind of painting. It's pretty early on, it still looks like medieval paintings. But in this panel, it depicts a group of saints admiring the Virgin. And among this group, you can see Saint Thaddeus, who is the namesake saint of Taddeo himself. And he's the only one of the apostles that directly looks at us. And he's not just sitting there. With his fingers, he's playing an active role, pointing at his ring finger and hinting at the idea of being so devoted to the Virgin and being so close to her as if he's married to her. I don't know, that sounds kind of weird, but nonetheless, it was an actually famous idea back then. All right. So in this religious context, Saint Thaddeus might have been a personal choice for the artist, but there's another saint that becomes the icon for many artists, and that's Saint Luke. Let me explain. In Christian tales, Saint Luke is one of the apostles that is more than anyone else involved in the life of Christ when he's a child. Many of the tales that we hear from Christ's childhood come from the Bible of Luke. And in these tales, Luke is famously the first person who drew the child Jesus and his mother. You can see how inspiring the position of such a saint is to a painter back in the Renaissance. To be a painter and so close to the holiest people, what a privilege. So it's no surprise when Rogier van der Weyden paints this image. Van der Weyden is one of the most influential artists of Northern Europe Renaissance. And in this picture, he literally paints his own likeness in the role of St. Luke in the act of drawing the Virgin and Child. And there's an interesting interplay between artist, viewer, and the art in this piece. In the picture, van der Weyden is drawing his subject, but he's also actually painting this painting. And the pose of the mother and child is in a way that is turned towards the real artist, or in our case, it is turned towards us, the viewer. For me, having this dynamic is very interesting, that the artist is the painter of the painting of himself painting. And that's true for many other self-portraits that we're going to see. So this is the religious side. We have the same sort of involvement on the social political side. Another one of Rogier van der Weyden's works is the 4 panels that he created for the Town Hall of Brussels. The Town Hall was actually the place where courts and judgments happened, and these huge panels told tales of justice and reminded the judges to be just. This is of course not the original work. This is just a very faithful tapestry copy of it. The originals were destroyed in a bombing of the city. Anyway, the stories aren't what we're here for. We're here for this guy. In the scope of the whole work, he's barely noticeable. But this is Rogier himself, and he is the only face looking at us directly. Here he's showing himself as being close to the Pope, as a part of the papal court. That means he shows himself as a man of power too. Let's move through some other examples of the artists painting themselves as observers and participants of a scene. This is the super famous huge fresco by Raphael. It's known as the School of Athens right now, and it's like a gathering of ancient influencers. You have Plato, Aristotle, Pythagoras, and so many other famous people. And on the side, you can see Raphael himself looking at you. It's funny how, for us, Raphael is just as influential as any of these other figures. But at that time, he just sneaks himself into the crowd to show that he could be just as important. Spoiler alert, he becomes more famous for us than most of the other people that we can see here. The same thing happens for another big name, Sandro Botticelli. Before he got super famous and respected in Italy, he was commissioned to paint this painting. It shows the adoration of the Magi, the famous biblical story of how 3 kings followed a star to find the newborn Christ. On the right of the painting, you can see Botticelli himself, based on the tradition, looking directly at us. The whole composition of this work is really interesting. You can see Botticelli looks much bigger than most of the other characters. And in the mirror side of the image, on the left, stands none other than Lorenzo de' Medici, or Lorenzo the Magnificent, one of the biggest art patrons of Renaissance Italy. I think this mirror positioning with men of power is very smart. He is showing like he is actually one of the men of power. Next up, we have the self-portrait by Giorgione. Here, the artist has taken the role of David who has beaten Goliath. Where is Goliath, you might ask? Well, this is just a cropped version of the actual painting that survives now. We know the full picture thanks to a woodcut print from the next century. That gives us the full picture. The artist isn't showing his physical abilities here. He's actually boasting about his mind and his art. And you know what? I think if Giorgione was alive today, he would press the like and subscribe button on this video. Now, the most famous face of the Renaissance self-portraits, the guy who made self-portraits a serious thing, is Albrecht Dürer. We'll talk a lot more about him in the next video where I talk about standalone individual self-portraits. But he also obeyed the same tradition and included himself in many of his major religious paintings. So, let's play a game called Finding Dürer. Can you find Dürer? Here he's holding his signature looking out at us. How about here? Here he's exactly the same. And here? This time he's a bit further from the action. But in all of these examples, he is somewhere observing the action. It's like he's telling us his own view of what has happened. Before taking a look at the sculptural self-portraits of this kind, let me just mention another artist who either has self-portraits or doesn't. Nobody really knows for sure. Jan van Eyck is one of the most important names in the art of Renaissance. He's an absolute master of oil paint. As far as self-portraits go, though, he doesn't really paint himself like the scenes that we saw. Let me show you. Jan van Eyck was a master of painting reflective surfaces. This is the most famous painting by him, the Arnolfini Marriage. Van Eyck has dated it 1434. Although it's not really a textbook self-portrait, in the convex mirror that is hanging in the back, you can see the tiny figures of two people. One of them could very well be the reflection of the artist. There are no details visible though. Other than that, it's very praised because of how accurately it shows the effect of the convex mirror. But can you see it's not really clear if it's a self-portrait or not? There are theories that say Van Eyck painted the two figures in the mirror to document the two observers that you need for officiating a marriage. But still, it's such a sneaky way of putting yourself in a scene. But it gets even sneakier. This one is a painting of the patron of this painting kneeling in front of the Virgin and the baby Jesus. And St. George is standing here in full armor. Guess where the self-portrait is? Look at this. There is a tiny figure of someone in the reflection of St. George's shield. This has to be the self-portrait of the artist. You gotta respect the sneakiness. Alright, let's wrap it up with self-portrait sculptures that are like this, artists in a scene or acting a role. In the last video about medieval self-portraits, I mentioned Peter Parler's self-portrait bust in St. Vitus Cathedral in Prague. That is the earliest surviving self-portrait of the actual likeness of the artists. Parler had made his own bust and put it among people of power in the church. Almost the same thing happens in Italy, in the hands of the master goldsmith Lorenzo Ghiberti. Ghiberti designed two sets of doors for the baptistry of Saint Giovanni in Florence. The two sets of doors are made 30 years apart. The first set is covered in 28 panels of scenes from the New Testament. Ghiberti puts his own bust among the busts of other prophets and saints. Here he's young. He's wearing a simple turban. He doesn't look that high-fashioned. Still, he's elevating his status by including himself among prophets. But he even takes a step further on the second doors. On this set of doors, there are depictions of Old Testament scenes. And again, there are a lot of details and busts of prophets and saints peeking through. This time, he uses this circular frame that used to be only for gods and emperors. Not only that, he actually puts his son's head right next to himself. So he's pretending as if he is like a king, and then his son is a prince. It's a dynasty, because his son was a sculptor too. Very bold claims in general, because he knows the value of his abilities. You can see the same thing in the self-portrait sculpture of Adam Croft. This is the Sacrament House built in St. Lawrence Church in Nuremberg by Adam Croft. It's an absolute masterpiece with all the Gothic decorations and the figures from the Passion of Christ going up to the ceiling of the church. But on the bottom, it seems like the whole structure is on the shoulders of three people. The one in the front is their leader. This is Adam Croft, and he's holding his tools of sculpture in his hands. The thing to pay attention to here is that although it's like he is lifting this heavy thing up, he isn't bent under the weight of it. It's like a walk in the park for him. He looks proud and heroic, and that really emphasizes the difference between what we talked about in the medieval self-portraits and Renaissance self-portraits. Started this video with Michelangelo, let's finish with him too. This sculpture is called the Deposition. It shows Nicodemus, Virgin Mary, and Mary Magdalene bringing the body of Jesus down from the cross. Michelangelo made this when he was old, and scholars widely believe that he used his own face to depict Nicodemus. The interesting history and the theories around this sculpture need a separate video, but it's interesting how he has made Nicodemus, or himself, the main part of this sculpture. When you look at it, you're not going to notice Jesus first. Your eyes are going directly to Nicodemus, or Michelangelo's face. And his face looks so similar to a portrait that one of his students painted of him. Anyway, some evidences show that he might have wanted to make this sculpture for his tombstone, but he actually tried to destroy it for some reason. We'll talk about that in another video. Okay, so we saw how this shift in people's view in Renaissance towards artists and art in general gave artists the confidence to show themselves as being a part of religious scenes and being close to the people of power. We saw how they tried to pull themselves away from the common man and showed that they're a part of the elite, the higher echelon of the society. But still, we haven't talked about the individual self-portraits, when the artist is the main subject and most of the times the only subject of the art. That's what we really think about when we usually talk about self-portraits. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next video in this series. So make sure to subscribe so you wouldn't miss that. The sources are, as always, in the description down below. By the way, make sure to check the other videos in the self-portrait history series. I'll link to those videos in the description as well. Also, I will link to the ones that I'm going to make in the future here as well. And it would be a great help for me if you subscribe to the channel and like the video. That way others can find the video much easier. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.